I just had the worst beat of my life, a really bad beat on DraftKings that cost me $118,000. And I'm going to get into exactly what happened right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports. You're watching the lineup review show. And in this lineup review show, I'm going to be reviewing my lineup that came within inches of winning $118,000. I had a first place lineup at the end of overtime or at the end of regulation in the Kansas City versus Tampa Bay game last night. And it went right until the last play of the game in overtime where Kareem Hunt scored a touchdown and it cost me $118K. And I'm going to get into that in a second. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me some sympathy likes here. Hit me to 30 and I'll put out a shorter video later on. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,200 subscribers. You're going to want to subscribe because the lineup that I built it on the show pretty much, or I built variations of the winning lineup on the show game script that I did with Spread Astaire yesterday. Spread and I broke down the game and we built some lineups, and Spread actually came in first in that contest, in one of those contests. So Spread had a big night, and I'm going to get him on to do a how I won video later on. But for this one, I want to focus on the losing lineup and share my pain with everybody. And I'll bring up that lineup right now so I can talk to you about basically what happened last night. So as you can see, this is all these circles. They don't have any time left in the game. This is what it was at right after regulation. I was up 118K plus and was having a great, was looking great to win all throughout the fourth quarter of last night's game. DeAndre Hopkins was my captain. DeAndre Hopkins ended up scoring his second touchdown of the game, I think in the beginning of the fourth quarter or something like that. And it got me 5 points up on a unique lineup in the Millie Maker contest or the $1 million Monday Night Showdown contest. I was at first place with about maybe 6 other people. And that's about as unique as you can get these days in Showdown. And that lineup was good in that contest for about 98K. I was also first in the chain mover contest. I was first place in the play action contest. And I was like, I was a different lineup, was doing well, but not as good in the $15 single entry contest on DraftKings last night. Let me take a look at the lineup. You can see it only ended up winning $75, which is absolutely brutal swing. Now, this is a variation of a lineup that Spread and I were building on the show. I didn't get on DeAndre Hopkins until after we recorded the show. I put him on the short video that I recorded later on in the day as my favorite pick for a captain option. And as you can see, he ended up coming through at a 6.5% ownership. He ended up scoring 42.9 points in the captain. That was good for the highest score on the night. He barely eked out Travis Kelce, who was also in my lineup. Patrick Mahomes did well too with a 24-point performance. Cade Otton, I had him in my lineup. I had Rachaad White. Otton and White were two of my favorite picks. White was also in my short video along with Mahomes. So in my short video where I put out my 4 favorite plays, I put that out about an hour before lock. I had Hopkins as my captain. I had Pat Mahomes in there, and I had Rachaad White. On the periphery, I had guys like Otton and Kelce. I had graphics made for them, but I ended up leaning on Trey Palmer instead. and I had Trey Palmer in my as my fourth guy in that video. He obviously didn't pan out, but most of them panned out. And anyone who followed that video would have had a nice night. Like if they followed at least the Hopkins advice and put in Mahomes and White in there too. White ended up not after regulation. White was the key component to help this lineup into first place. But White obviously, like his 12.5 at the end of overtime was not enough to get him in the optimal. Samaje Perine. The reason why I had Samaje Perine in there was because basically Tampa Bay had been weaker against receiving backs than actual running backs. And I faded Kareem Hunt in this particular lineup because of that. With Samaje Perine, I anticipated him having a bigger workload than he has recently. I figured he'd get more work in the passing game. And, I saw his ownership was going to be low. I didn't realize it was going to be at 2.5% in the entire contest. That's ridiculous. And Perine ended up scoring a touchdown, getting 13.5 DraftKings points. That touchdown that Perine scored was what ultimately propelled me into first place. I think it happened somewhere in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And when he got that touchdown and got me into first place, I was holding that all the way through the end of overtime where Kareem Hunt scored that touchdown. That's what ultimately sunk me. But you can see DeAndre Hopkins had that big night. Mahomes had his best night of the season. Spread and I talked about this extensively on Game Script yesterday about how we thought that Mahomes was going to be in really good shape to have the best night of his season. Travis Kelce was a volume guy. We both thought that Travis Kelce was going to get enough volume throughout the night to get himself in the optimal. And he had 14 receptions for 100 plus yards, receiving yards. Kate Otten. Kelce, by the way, was 14.5 in the captain. Mahomes was 17.5 in a captain. I faded both those captain ownerships with DeAndre Hopkins. I started seeing news towards the game starting where DeAndre Hopkins was going to was forming a really good chemistry with Patrick Mahomes that stemmed from their mutual history with Cliff Kingsbury. Patrick Mahomes played for Kingsbury in college, and Hopkins obviously played for Kingsbury in Arizona. And the way that Kingsbury, runs his offense is a lot of feel. And Mahomes and Hopkins kind of bonded over that. And they formed a good chemistry almost instantly. And they were talking it up, their chemistry leading into the game. I was seeing that kind of breaking like right before the game, probably about an hour or two before the game started. And that really put me on Hopkins as my captain. I was willing to take a chance on him at that point. I liked his ownership. I go for these wide receivers under 10% that have upside. And he came in at 6.5%, which was perfect. The perfect captain for me. Mahomes, with Hopkins in the captain, he was also cheap. He was only 10.5 in the captain spot. That enabled me to get Mahomes, Kelce, Otten, all expensive guys, and White into my lineup. And then I went with my cheap guy. I went with Perine with that theory that, maybe Perine would play a bigger role than Hunt in the game. And that was working up until that last touchdown, as I mentioned. And that's what really just screwed me, knocked me from winning $98,000 to winning $75, knocked me down in the rankings from number 1 to number 504. Literally just one touchdown did all this damage and just completely, decimated my hopes of having the biggest night of my DFS career. I've come close so many times like this, and I've become used to these soul-crushing defeats. But, this one was the worst I've ever experienced. It was a $118,000 swing. So it was just a horrible, horrible night. But it was a good sweat. It was just a horrible night. The first place team that ended up winning, giant chop in that first place. 21K ended up being, the winning amount, but still, like, anybody will take 21K. I'll take 21K in a heartbeat. DeAndre Hopkins, the captain in this one. Mahomes, same as mine. Kelsey, same as mine. Otten, same as mine. Now, this Miller guy, Ryan Miller, was a guy that Spread and I talked about extensively on the show on Game Script. We talked about how he was getting a 40% snap share the last game that he played. He was $1,000. He was getting a 40% snap share, which put him up higher than some of these other scrubby receivers that people were talking up. Not only did he have that 40% snap share, but he was getting a decent targets. He got 5 targets in that game against Atlanta, and he got 1 target versus New Orleans, but he caught it for 39 yards. So he had 2 weeks in a row of 5 DraftKings points. That's 5X on a 1K guy. And, we were just hoping for him to get, 5 points last night as a skeleton key to get in all these expensive guys. So we had Ryan Miller in basically all our builds yesterday, or a lot of the builds that had, more expensive players featured in the builds. It was a way of getting the expensive guys in, and Ryan Miller ended up being that skeleton key that people needed to get their first overall placement in that contest last night. He was 15% owned. That came in probably a little higher than I would have expected, but 15% is still a good amount. But as you can see, 15% along with a 6% captain, still gets you, like a 26-person chop for first. So still a good haul by the people who came in first last night. 21K. I would gladly take 21K right now, considering I ended up only winning about $480 last night after sweating, like 118K, like showing up in my winnings from basically the end of the third quarter all the way through the very last play of the game. Just a horrible, horrible beat. I can't stress that enough, how much that just fucking sucks. But that's the way that this stuff goes sometimes. The key thing is, though, I want to get people to take away is when Spread and I do these shows, or when I do these shows, I'm building to either win or potentially come in last place. I don't really care. Like, the thing that I am trying to do is build a lineup that has a shot to win. And that's why, like, I took that chance with Hopkins in the captain, and I took all those just all those chances with P. Ryan, kind of pivoting over to P. Ryan and doing stuff like that. P. Ryan, I was not expecting him to come in that low, like I mentioned, but he ended up coming in low for me and having a good night. And it was just about to be good enough for the taking first place in this contest. Ended up falling short with the game going into overtime. Another thing with that game is, why would you go into overtime against the Chiefs? You might as well go for 2, end it, or try to end it. Why would you put your fate in a coin flip? It makes no sense against the Chiefs. If you're putting your fate on a coin flip against the Chiefs, it's stupid for multiple reasons, but it's stupid because you're still putting up to a coin flip, and it's stupid because, if the Chiefs somehow win that coin flip, they have an excellent chance of just ending the game on you. At least if you're going for 2 points at the end of that game, you have the fate in your hands and you control your own destiny. But instead, they put it on a freaking coin flip, and just a horrible decision by the coaching staff, in my opinion. They could have just, like, gone for the jugular, end the game. You're a team that's missing all your weapons. Like, you're a team that's struggling. You needed that win. The best way to beat the Chiefs is at the goal line. You had an opportunity to do it at the goal line. Instead, you decided to let your defense, which has been playing horribly like all season, you wanted to trust your defense to potentially stop the Chiefs in overtime. Horrible decision. Cost me 118K. I'm not bitter about it, but I'm going to try to get Spread on later today to talk about his winning lineup. But that is how, like I had a really bad swing last night in the showdown contests that cost me 118K. But we move on to the next slate and hopefully have better luck on the next one. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,200 subscribers to before Thanksgiving, or actually no, before the end of this coming week. So I appreciate any help with that. Make sure to hit the like button. 30 likes will trigger the next video. 30 likes, and I'll try to get the Spread on to recap his winning lineup. And until then, thanks guys for watching. Thanks for everybody for your support, and hopefully we have better luck with the next one. Thanks guys.